Hello, everybody. It's ED Rosenberg again, and this morning I am talking to Suzie. Suzie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Ed?
Okay, I'm doing good. Suzie is the private label lawyer. She deals a lot with private label brands, specifically on Amazon, eBay, online. First of all, Suzie, tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get to this point?
Sure. I have been an intellectual property attorney for just over 13 years, and I started out in patent prosecution, and I found that kind of boring. And so I evolved into doing trademark work primarily. And so I've been doing primarily trademark prosecution, enforcement, maintenance, things like that for about 11 years. I've worked at a couple larger firms, and I'm solo now. And last year, I had a client who was doing private label work on Amazon, and it was a very, utilizing the platform in that way was very bizarre to me because I'd pretty much only been an Amazon person as a customer. Although I did recall the other day that I sold a bunch of law school books right after I graduated from law school on Amazon way back in 2003. So, I can say, well, maybe I was an Amazon seller way back in the day.
Right.
But yeah, so I had this client that was doing private label work, and so I wasn't familiar with it. So I kind of dug into it myself and did some importing, and I really learned the Amazon platform as much as I could. I mean, obviously, a lot of it's still pretty elusive, but learn the Amazon platform, and then just being a part of the Facebook groups and things like that, I realized that a lot of people really needed help in the areas of trademarks and branding and counterfeits, obviously a huge problem. And so this past year, I kind of decided to rebrand my practice and become the private label lawyer. And of course, I accept clients that aren't selling on Amazon, but right now I'd say the bulk of my client base right now are Amazon sellers.
Right. Now, the reason why it's changed, in my opinion, is it used to always be you had the big companies, right? Sony, Panasonic, Toshiba. And then they were always out there protecting their brand. Now, because it became so easy to import and for a variety of other reasons, and there are so many different niches, so everybody is now on the other side of the coin, and they're protecting their brand. Except Panasonic and Toshiba, they were able to afford in-house counsel and have lawyers who did nothing all day, and all they did was sue people who violated their trademark. So right. So that is why it evolved the need for small brand owners who have little tiny niches to protect their brand, because just like my brand, I see sometimes people selling my stuff on eBay, and even though I'm not a major brand, ultimately, I never got paid for that. And then when it comes to returns, the customer comes to me.
Of course, yeah.
So, and besides the fact I can't sell it for the same amount because I'm competing with my own product. And that is why there is a need for someone like you. Now, a big percentage of e-commerce today is happening in marketplaces, and by far the biggest is Amazon. Now, Amazon has had for years, they protected certain lines, either through enforcement, seller performance, or they wouldn't even let you list certain items. You had to get, well, now you have approval. How can I get my brand approved in such a way that no one else can list against my brand?
Yeah, that is a great question. And of course, everyone is asking this question. Back in, I really started working with Amazon sellers. I realized that they were obviously having a huge problem with counterfeiters. And this is kind of going to your question. And I'll get to your question, but there was a huge problem with counterfeiters. And, on the other side of the same coin, I would see these people who were doing retail arbitrage and online arbitrage, and they were complaining about getting what's called gated. And they couldn't sell, on an Adidas or Samsung or Linksys or certain Disney branded sites on Amazon. They were basically gated out of selling products on those brands. And so I was like, well, wait a second here. If these companies can do it, like, why can't my clients' brands do it? Sure, they're not multi-million-dollar brands yet, but at the same time, like, their brands are just as important to them. I am a firm believer that, small businesses that's what drives this country. And, to me, protecting them and helping them with the, enforcement of their brands, the protection of their brands is just as important. So I was like, you know what, why can't my clients' brands get gated? So let's get the ball rolling on this and see how this works. So I did about everything I possibly could, short of going to Seattle and, beating down doors at Amazon and saying, someone help me internally do this. And so finally I did get in contact with someone internally at Amazon who I work with to help clients get their brands gated. And gating is basically an invisible wall around an Amazon brand, and it prevents third parties from listing against your branded listing. So the cool thing about once you get the gating in place is that it doesn't discriminate against counterfeiters or, maybe somebody who happened to get a hold of your product, at liquidation. And even that kind of thing, once those people, even though they might be selling your authentic product, they're going to be driving down your price. So at the end of the day, you want a really clean listing without a bunch of sellers on there. And obviously you don't want counterfeiters on there, but really, you have to think about, what your product is exactly. Is it a supplement? Is it something that goes, I always say honor in the body, is even more imperative that, that channel to the consumer is as short as possible, or exactly how you drive it. So that's why it's really important to prevent those third parties from listing on your Amazon listings, and gating really seems to be the answer to that.
Yeah, it does seem to be the answer, because when they do get on, like it is now, then it's a whole process and a whole fight trying to get them off. And and you don't want to fight with anyone on Amazon, because I'm sure you're familiar. If you fight with someone on Amazon, even if you're right, Amazon just looks at you as a headache, and they could.
Right. Well, when you're dealing with counterfeits, and you're able to sort of explain to Amazon that you're not just aggressively protecting your brand, you're also trying to help the consumer have a better experience. Sometimes they seem to be more responsive to that, because Amazon at the end of the day is a consumer-centric platform, and they don't care about the sellers, but they do want the consumer to have a positive purchasing experience.
Right. So when you gate a brand, it's not per ASIN, it's for the whole brand.
It should be the whole brand. Before you can request gating, you already have to be enrolled in Amazon's
brand registry.
Yeah. And so so basically gating is tied to what's under the brand registry. So any ASINs that you have connected to that should also be gated. One thing that we are seeing is that sometimes you will only, or a third party will only be prevented from listing against a gated brand their product as new. So they would still be able to list against the listing if they put the product as used like new. But I'm also seeing situations where Amazon seems to be gating everything. So I think that they're taking it really on a case-by-case basis. Of course, certain products you can't sell as used anyway, like supplements, obviously. Right. And I don't think clothing and that kind of stuff. But so there are kind of different levels of gating, and what Amazon decides to implement for a particular brand is sort of up to them. My job is to really make a case for why the brand should be just gated, period. And of course, I always ask for it to be done at every level, but that doesn't always happen.
Right, but most people will be thrilled to have people gated just for new. You get the buy box, and new is new.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Now, if you don't want me asking, what's the success rate? I mean, is it 100%? Is it 10%? What's the success?
Yeah, when I first started doing this, I was getting so excited because the success rate was, like 100%. I was like, yeah, they're getting gated. But then, as I started submitting more, that success rate has gone down. And I think that is sort of to be expected. It's about 70-75%. The common thread that I'm seeing in the brands that I'm not getting gated are Amazon listings that aren't clearly branded. So when you go to their website or go to the listing, all you see is, like a white t-shirt. So, other sellers think that they could just list a white t-shirt. But it's really important that the second someone hits that listing, including the people within Amazon, I think, who are looking at this, they need to see that it's a clearly branded listing, that it has your brand, that you have pictures of your t-shirt hang tag, that you have pictures of your product packaging, and anything else about your particular products that make it unique. You need to show images of that and make it clear, like I said, to Amazon or anyone else who's hitting that listing, that it's a branded listing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They don't want just anything you imported from China with your name on it.
Yeah, and Amazon isn't going to help us gate things like that, because you got to give them an incentive to gate you. And of course, one of those incentives is if you have a supplement, or like I said, it's something that goes on or inside the body, or something that, is something heavily regulated. There's more of a, incentive for Amazon to gate those types of products. And also, like I said, if they see that it's a, heavily branded listing, I think that they're more receptive to gating those as well.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
But you also have to remember when we're submitting the gating request, at the end of the day, you have individuals who are subjective. It's a subjective process as far as I know. I mean, of course, they could have something that makes it more quantifiable in terms of whether or not they'll gate you. Of course, I don't know that, but all I can look at and think about is, well, these are just individuals who are working within Amazon who make that final call.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that it's subjective because, I know of one person who told me he was applying for for category approval, and he said he submitted 35 times the same information and was rejected, and the 36th time he got it.
Maybe they just got tired of hearing from it. But I do feel like persistence within Amazon is, yeah, it does. And I do it for my clients. Like if I'm doing, counterfeiter removals, of course, I pretty much always will contact that third party seller first to put them on notice and give them an opportunity to address it or whatever they need to do before I'll report it to Amazon. But once I do, usually Amazon will respond to my request within 3 to 5 days. Well, in some situations, they're resistant, or I'll get that canned email that everyone else gets. It's like, you have to provide, this additional information. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, just look at my original letter. It's all right there, but then I put exactly how they want it, wait 3 days, check on my docket. Okay, well, I need to check the status. If it's still not off, like I've got language that I'll use that is clearly increasing my aggressiveness towards Amazon to get the counterfeiter removed. And also to kind of put it on them a little bit, like, hey, you're, in some ways you're contributing to this by permitting this third party to be on here. So, heads up, you're put on notice.
Yeah, I agree. Because I've seen it also. If you keep, like people submit invoices and they say, well, Amazon didn't accept my invoices. It's just one guy making that decision. So if you just resubmit it and you make your case and you spell things out, I found also persistent annoyance works.
Yeah, they're like, will this person please go away? If I can just get her to go away.
Right. I agree. And now when they reject your request, do they tell you that you're rejected or
the brain gating?
Yeah.
This is another thing about Amazon that drives me crazy, but no, they won't proactively tell me that I've been rejected or why. And they won't proactively let me know that the restrictions have been put in place. And my contact at Amazon, has basically said, I'm going to do what I can on my side, but I'm not going to let you know.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're just going to have to keep checking the ASINs and that kind of thing. So, they won't proactively let us know.
Have you seen this? I don't know if you're familiar. I've seen it with a lot of sellers. They get brand approval or category approval, and then it still doesn't work.
What do you mean? Like they still can't list in a category, or they're still, even though
they get brand approval, they'll get brand approval for a certain brand, and then
yeah, like to sell a certain brand, I don't really know. I don't really know my way around as much on that side of it,
right,
where people are requesting to be ungated or to be able to sell a certain brand. Now, I do understand that Amazon is charging to do that. Like I've seen different amounts, like $500, $1,500, something like that. And I don't know if that's just for their time to kind of help them go through the brand approval process. I'm not quite sure.
I know why they're doing it. I know exactly why they're doing it, because they don't want they don't want people opening multiple accounts. So.
Okay.
So this way, if you're invested, if you have to pay $3,000 for a certain brand, you're not going to open up 10 accounts and pay $30,000.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I foresee that Amazon will start doing more types of fee-based things like that, and maybe that's a policy reason behind it, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's the way I see it, because I think they're really cracking down on multiple accounts. And this way, it's just not worth it. If you have so much money invested into your account, you're not going to open up a secondary account. And what are you going to do? Apply for all the approvals again? So they make it hard for you, and they charge you all this money. I'm sure they wouldn't, they're not against making money, but I don't think that's driving them over here. That's just the way I see it.
It's such a small amount for Amazon, but it could be definitely a cost prohibitive amount for most of us normal people. So
right. Right. Okay, now one last question. If I do get my private label brand gated, can I allow certain people to sell, like certain authorized sellers?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you start going through the brand gating process, one question that I do ask people are, who are your currently authorized sellers? Because we don't want to accidentally gate them out. And I've had that happen. And it was a fairly easy fix, but you want to keep that from, you don't want to make your authorized sellers mad, obviously. So, the first thing you want to think about is who is authorized. A lot of times, a lot of the clients that I deal with, they don't have any authorized sellers. They are the only ones. So it's not a big deal. But when I make the initial request to Amazon, I do let them know, like, these are the authorized sellers, kind of carve out that exception once the gating gets in place. If someone comes along later on that you want them to be authorized to sell, when they try to list against your listing, they will get a notification that says that you're not permitted to sell this brand as new, and that you have to get approval of the brand owner, and then Amazon will start guiding them through that process.
But who's involved in those decisions if a certain reseller is allowed to sell on that brand? Is it Amazon, or do they contact the brand owner?
They contact the brand owner.
Do?
Yes, the brand owner will have to approve that.
Oh, really? That's interesting. And the money, what they charge, I'm assuming, goes to Amazon.
So, well, I assume it goes to Amazon as well. Now, that extra money they're charging, I think they're just doing that right now with like the big brands. I haven't had a situation where any of my clients that I've gotten branded who are, most of them are maybe $1 million in sales. They're not like massive companies or anything. As far as I know, none of them have any type of fee associated with them for third parties to, I think it's like the brands that, you see in Walmart and that people get a hold of at liquidation, like the big brands that, a lot of people could get, product from and list on. I don't think it's going to apply to like the smaller brands. That could change at some point. So.
Right. But even if, yes, that money's going to Amazon.
I think that money probably goes to Amazon. I haven't heard otherwise.
Right. Okay, Suzie, that's really good. I'll put your contact information on the video if anybody wants to contact you. and that was really informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. I hope people enjoy it. I hope they found it informative.
Okay, thank you. Bye.